I'm going to start off by inviting Mr. Karamjot Singh Anand from DLT Labs. He's a senior consultant with DLT Labs, which is working with blockchain space and other technology under its umbrella. And he has a long experience in logistics and the banking domains. Welcome, Karamjot. Just one request for all the speakers who are going to speak in this session. May we request you to keep your talk to less than 15 minutes because we are short on time and we have a panel coming up. Karamjot.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I know it's been a long day for all of you, and I'll try to make my presentation a bit smaller, as well as interesting for all of you. Let me get what I need to do. All right. So just a couple of minutes, a couple of lines on me. Basically, I am working as a senior consultant with DLT Labs and have a good amount of experience in the domains of logistics and banking. Right. I work under the umbrella of blockchain and other related technologies alongside. All right. All right. So today's session, basically, I would presenting what exactly and the solutions we have, right, for the different use cases and the different products we've developed along. So what exactly is blockchain first, right? We've heard in our panels before, talking about blockchain. It's nascent technology coming in, and people are looking into the details of it. So we'll take a few minutes just talking about blockchain, what exactly this is, and then move on from there onto the products over here, all right? So the key prospects of blockchain, why exactly is it becoming more and more common and sort of a necessity with the upcoming technologies, is because first of all, it's immutable. We all know that. So it's basically, you don't have records coming here. They get updated. They do not get, they do not get deleted over here. So it's a proof of truth for us, right? Now, if you haven't looked over here, it's basically a shared network in a layman language, right, with data replicated across multiple systems and with no center or authority coming in, right? And with this, what we say is everybody has a hold of it. So we've heard of the word consensus, as the literal meaning says, where every peer looks into the consensus of it, right? It gives consent on what exactly is supposed to be added to the system. So that's blockchain, right? So we've got, peer-to-peer network over here, right? It's all accorded and recorded over the blockchain with no deletions, right? It's all updated, appended to it, right? Then there's no central authority, as I said earlier, right? And of course, apart from just cryptocurrencies, blockchain is nowadays used for storing other records and content as well, which basically down the line comes in as part of auditors or trials coming in. So that is where we can use it. All right, so the advantages of blockchain, as we said, the transactions, it's all encrypted. It's all cryptographically managed over here, right? We've got peer-to-peer communications coming in, and that reduces the number of handoffs as well, right? In a normal chain where the system goes in from one source to another, over here there are multiple sources looking into the same record at the same time. So real-time data is there over here. Then we've got ledgers, as we know, right? Ledgers basically become a source of truth down the line. And with blockchain being immutable, it exactly justifies the meaning of it. And then finally, we have the smart contracts. As the name says, it's smart enough to take care of all the communications within the blockchain and as well as encapsulate all the data over here. So basically what it does is all the raw data gets auto-transmitted, triggered, and of course, it's getting managed across all the peer nodes. Now, what exactly is DLT? Now, DLT, we've got around more than five offices across the world, right? And we've handled around more than 50 projects coming in, and a few products which basically are the most sellable products of our, which we see over here, as which I'll of course come down the line with you. So we've got those products which actually help solutionize the use cases what our earlier panels already spoke about. So we'll see that during this, right? And we've got way more than alliances coming in with, we see PwC, KPMG, we've got BSE, Bombay Stock Exchange with us, right? The Cloud iOS, that's a Singapore partner coming in. And of course, MOBI, that's of course who's given us the chance to talk into this forum right now, right? And we've got other hyperledgers and Ethereum partners as well. Now, the product platforms, right? When looking at smart government initiatives, we have products and expertise that meet the various technology. We've seen the different use cases in mobility, right? We've seen what smart cities basically look into as part of the future coming in. And how our products would basically solutionize this is where we come across. The supply chain and the blockchain. Now, I'll spend some time over here in this particular section to help understand what exactly is the solution we are doing and what exactly. So we know, what a supply chain is, right? It's basically of transferring of goods from source to the destination, right? It's a simple supply chain, but behind this simple transfer, there is a lot of tedious work and complex work at the back end. You start from point A to point B to point C to point D and so on and so forth till the time you reach your destination. Now, over here, it's basically the product which we've offered, right, that's developed for supply chain is basically DL Asset Track. Now, what, as the name literally says, it's a tracking of the assets which start from source to the destination, right? So it basically records and updates all the transactions which we have on real time. That's one of the pain points which we already know, right? That's a complete modular platform with intuitive graphical interface so that the end user, it's actually happening to see, okay, this is just a click at the click of a button. Now, it was today only, when I was having a discussion with one of my clients over here, right? And I showcased them our presentation and the system what we've built for them. The instant response from them was, this is pretty cool. It's simple, because for me, it's just a click. I enter the data in the form and I save it out. That's all the end users want to do. But at the back, the entire development and the movement of the chain from one node to the other has been taken care through a workflow, which helps you to track at every single point. And that's what DL Asset Track does for us. So we see, it's an end-to-end visibility of the assets, right, across the chain, starting from source till the destination. We've got provenance materials, right, and of course lower administrative costs when we look into the legacy supply chain managements, and of course when you're using blockchain with us. So it's a low cost maintenance, of course. Now, as we said, the pain points, what exactly are the pain points of supply chain? We know that, it's difficult to track the consignment between multiple shippers, multiple points and carriers, right? We've got poor visibility of operations coming in, right? And mismatch of shippers. There are chances that there's got a delay happening due to some, weather problem or some political issue coming in. So there are multiple reasons. And this is where blockchain, our product, helps us to give real-time updates to the end users who's actually paying for this service, right? Then the other pain point which we've seen is basically the real-time information. So imagine across the world, you've been through multiple cities. A transaction starts from south of India, goes up to the north, right? Now, what exactly is there? So as soon as the consignment gets loaded over there at the south, as an end user, I need something to come back to me instantly. Okay, I should be safe enough to say that my consignment has already been loaded and ducked up. Now, how can that happen? In the legacy systems, that's not possible. But with real-time information, right, which our product basically levies upon, that's where we come into play, right? So as soon as you start with the system, across the peer, all the nodes As I said, it's a replicated system, a distributed system with information replicated across. So all the nodes come in to apply and get the information instantly. Moving on, another pain point is the paper-based transactions. It's tedious. We all know that. We've all gone through that. And nowadays, with our mobile devices coming into play, and the desktops, laptops, you all want to go into online and digital transactions. That's the real example of us, right? And of course, with this, the operational cost also comes down a bit. All right. So IoT and connectivity, the challenges and the solutions. We've seen, right? Blockchain and IoT, they go hand in hand. But what exactly is an upper hand for blockchain is everything is on a ledger. It's all recorded across multiple nodes, right? Whereas in IoT, what we basically would like to see is the main server should be, or the sensors should actually have the proprietary information of the assets coming in. And that is where they can track it out, right? But with blockchain, everything is encrypted, cryptographically stored. So there's very less chances, or rather zero chances of leakage or proof coming in, right? And of course, when we develop IoTs across a huge span of area, that becomes a complex solution that is more costly. With blockchain, that all gets reduced down to, I would say, minimal of it, basically. Okay, I hope the video gets played over here. If not, I'll probably walk through it. Does it play? I see the... Sorry. It doesn't actually. So I was just looking. That person over there, I believe, he's helping me out on this. Sorry for this, guys. Does it move forward? All right. Let me escape. Let's see if that goes now. I'm sorry? Yes, we do, but that's on the system over here. So you've got this link. I'm not sure if the link is handy over here, but that's not a problem. So I can help you imagine what a product looks like. Let's try that out. I hope it should be interesting over here now. So as I spoke about, it's a DL asset track. So the name says asset, right, and tracking of it. So basically, over here we basically have different parties coming into play, right, across the, and these different parties, one of them becomes consumer, one of them becomes suppliers, or multiple suppliers coming in. You've got auditors, you've got process owners, you've got contractors. Everybody comes onto the same platform, right? And at this platform is where basically what happens. You start off with a transaction, right? And as per the workflow design what we've developed, right? What happens, the transactions propagates from one node to the other node. Now, as soon as you start off with one transaction on node 1, instantly that instruction or that transaction gets logged into our ledger, or the blockchain, what we call as, right? And is also replicated across multiple parties inside that particular channel. Now, why do I say channel? Is because all these parties form under one frame. Now, that is where a blockchain also helps us understand that, this particular hyperledger fabric which we use, the platform on what this has been developed, it supports private channel as well. So it ensures that no data leak or no spoofing comes into play. Now, as soon as you start transacting from one node to another, there are different parties which come into play. And these parties have their own records coming in. These parties have their own information coming in. And they, of course, get all logged into the ledger itself. Right? Unfortunately, I cannot showcase the video. That would have been much more interesting, though. But I'll quickly move out now. For smart cities, right? So we've already seen what exactly are we looking for as part of smart cities, right? What exactly do we want out of it, right? Improve the quality of life, capacity, and the infrastructure, right? So I'll quickly walk you through now what exactly a smart city looks like is where the government wants to focus on the health, the digital identity, the infrastructure, energy, and financial stuffs. These are all already the panels spoken about. And this is where the product or blockchain, which we've developed, comes into play to solutionize it. All right. With the different governments coming in, right, we've got multiple projects in hand. We've already developed something for Zimbabwe where land registry solution was developed out of DL Certify. That's one of our products coming in. For Rwanda, we've done it for the health record management. And for the DRC, we've got the asset track coming over here for all those import of goods. And of course, we are with India for NSDC, wherein we give them the solution to certify as well as to use their wallets. Now, the use cases, I'm sure, I'll just take a couple of minutes. I know we are short of time, but allow me a couple of minutes to just go through them, right? So the blockchain and the record management. What exactly is the record management? As we know, right? It's the digital identity. As Mr. Ghosh mentioned in our earlier conversation, right? The UIDAI having that Aadhaar card, right? That's all digital. Similar to that, what exactly is digital management or record management? Where every record of the person gets logged into the blockchain and is immutable, available for lifetime, right? This is where the pain point of paper-based processes or issuance of the new processes move out, and the solution for reduced wait times and the government having all the accreditations and the responses there on the system comes into play. There you can see at the bottom, the different products which we would like to boast upon actually, right? Because these have been solutioning way more than use cases now, right? The asset track, the certify as I just spoke about, right? The data consent, the name says we take consent amongst all the members coming in, right? And of course, the ecosystem of the wallet. Voting, a very coincidence or very fortunate day to talk about that. In India right now, we are doing that voting counts right now as we speak, right? And at the same time, what exactly the blockchain can help us in voting. We all know the process now. Today's counting starts from day 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening, right? And sometimes gets extended as well. Over here, the blockchain is all automatic, right? As soon as it's cast away, it's first of all fraud proof. It allows you to take the instance records in the system itself, right? And of course, you can get your results instantly out of it. The health records, that's another one of the use cases for a smart city, where we want all our health records to be stored in a way where everybody, the health providers, they can access it. We, as the consumers, are aware of it, right? So the paperwork and all that stuff goes out with our blockchain. And then we have the energy sector coming in, where we basically can transfer energy from one source to another as part of credits. They get logged into our ledger for immutable purposes, and of course for lifetime, right? We've got our ecosystem coming in, where that's the wallet which we just spoke about, right? It helps you to make those transactions online. Okay, I guess I did wrap up. Did I? In time? All right. So a couple of minutes for any Q&A. I would be more than happy to answer. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
So next, I would like to invite Mr. Arka Roy Chowdhury, who is a principal consultant at Infosys. He's facilitating the adoption of blockchain in business and society. He holds an executive MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Indore. Welcome, Arka.
So Arka and I are co-presenting. Since the announcer forgot, it's perfectly fine.
That saves us some time. So let me also welcome Vivek Gupta. Vivek is country head of R3. Prior to R3, Vivek was the founder of Covered, a San Francisco, did I get the name right?
Yeah.
Covered, a San Francisco-based tech startup providing working capital finance to workers in US's sharing economy. That sounds very interesting. He has also worked with the Prime Minister's office as consultant to NSDC and with the Chief Minister's office in Andhra Pradesh as an advisor to the Economic Development Board of the state. He is currently a member of the committee set up by the Bureau of Indian Standards to formulate India's blockchain standard. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thanks to the MOBI team for inviting us. I think, and thanks to Infosys for sharing the stage with us and presenting the solution, which is around usage-based insurance. The problem with presenting alongside a giant like Infosys is people first ask, what is R3? Who is R3? What do you guys do? And it's very more and more common outside if you look outside the blockchain bubble. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about R3, the way we think about mobility, and then hand over to my friend Arka for taking the discussion forward. So R3 originally started, and that's why we love MOBI so much. It's similar to what MOBI is today. It started originally as a group of banks which came together and tried to figure out, how they could leverage blockchain technology, similar to the way MOBI is bringing the automobile industry together. So we did that. We did an intensive study of all the blockchain platforms for a couple of years, and then came to the conclusion that if you needed a true blockchain for business, you had to reimagine how blockchains worked. And that led to the creation of what is our one and only platform. We are a fairly simple company. We have only one product, and we try and evangelize that, which is Corda, which is a blockchain platform that is built for business. So think of us as the Windows of the blockchain world, or Linux of the blockchain world, the operating system. And on top of that, people build applications. And along with that, we decided that we will not build the applications ourselves, but rely on a wide ecosystem of partners. And one of the biggest partners in this space is Infosys. Today, we have over 400 partners globally, over 29 applications in production, including a couple from India, which I'm really proud about because as far as timing goes, India is leading the world, at least in the financial services, in actually putting solutions into production. So what makes Corda unique and why it was chosen by the likes of Infosys for their users-based insurance platform is its emphasis on privacy. So at the end of the day, blockchains, one of the biggest problems that people have, especially across industries, is the fact that there is replication of data across multiple nodes. So Corda is a peer-to-peer or a point-to-point privacy system. And the second big thing which sets us apart is that we are designed purely for enterprises. So essentially, we are looking at putting things into production as soon as possible, at as much low cost as possible, and reusing as many of the technologies that exist within enterprises. So we work with all the standard technologies that exist across enterprises and make it really simple for our partners to come and build applications on top and convert that into revenue generating opportunities. As a result, today from 2017 to 2018, we have emerged as the largest or the fastest growing blockchain platform per Gartner, with about 14.5% of all the blockchain development in 2018 happening on Corda. So before I hand over to Arka, just wanted to spend 1 minute probably on figuring out how we think about where blockchain should be used and how blockchain should be used in mobility. So when we look at blockchain, and I say this as a joke, one of the biggest things in my job is if people come to me with 10 use blockchain for 7 use cases, I have to tell them, no, you don't need a blockchain, go use traditional technologies. But essentially, blockchain is really useful when you are looking to integrate data across multiple sources, where those sources cannot share data either because they are competitors, they have regulatory constraints, geographic constraints, or whatever. It's also very useful where you are looking at a common shared level of data, and this data could be obtained from new and interesting sources. So sensor data, for example. You want to maintain privacy, you want to maintain security, blockchain is a good use case. But again, if you're dealing with something that needs to be solved in the physical world, probably blockchain can deliver some efficiencies, but not really that much. So it's still the entire platform has to be end-to-end digital, or at least have a component which converts the physical into the digital. And the second thing, and this Arka will touch on, is how our partners are using blockchain. Is essentially, blockchain has still not become very good at taking and consuming huge data sets and being performant. So if you are thinking of designing a blockchain network that takes data from 1 million IoT sensors in your smart city, I would take a pause and think about how you want to redesign the system to be more efficient. And this is just being completely honest, because at the end of the day, as practitioners and people in the industry, what we want to do is create credible solutions and not overhype and overpromise things that we cannot deliver. So when we think of mobility, we think of mobility across the entire supply chain or across the entire value chain, starting from manufacture going all the way up to insurance or end of life management of a device or a mobility system. And there are different use cases. I won't bore you by reading the slide, but you can see it can go all the way from managing the supply chain of how a vehicle is put together to when the vehicle goes on the road, how it performs, providing telemetry back in a reliable fashion to insurers or to authorities so that they can draft policies or reduce your cost of ownership of the vehicle. It also, as we'll talk about in the next panel, plays an important role by marrying mobility and finance such that the data that is being recorded on the blockchain layer can actually help you become more mobile by lowering your cost of ownership or cost of borrowing of the vehicle or the instrument that you are using. With that framework, I'd hand over to Arka to take us through a fairly exciting use case in this space, which is around usage-based insurance.
Thank you, Vivek. I really don't need these specs, but I'm going to wear it nonetheless. It makes me look cool. Okay, at least I was able to make you laugh. Okay, so if you have not guessed it already, we really think, Vivek and I really think blockchain is the solution for all the world's problems. Well, blockchain not by itself. Blockchain in conjunction with IoT to get the physical world data, the world that is around us, to get that data, with AI to make sense of the data, to identify patterns, to make recommendations. And of course, we see DLT or blockchain as a communication layer, a layer which facilitates multi-party transactions or multi-party information exchange in a trusted and transparent manner. With this simple idea, we created Infosys Intelligent Application Platform, aka IIAP, which allows you to accelerate development of multiple use cases, which is at the convergence of these all frontier and emerging technologies. And we didn't just make a hammer looking for a nail. We actually had a lot of applications around. And those applications were from smart cities to smart factories, and my favorite one, the connected vehicles. And the one which I'm going to talk about today, and hopefully we'll be able to show a demo, is on usage-based insurance on a connected vehicle. So this demo, by the way, was built on IIAP. IIAP is nothing but a platform which allows you to develop multiple use cases. And the one which I'm showing is on a connected vehicle usage-based insurance for a fleet owner. So a typical stakeholders in a fleet management are these, the vehicle servicing agency, the clients, the insurers, and the internal facing agencies, like your IT operations guy, the staffs, et cetera, et cetera. This could be different based on which fleet owner you're looking at, but more or less there are multiple stakeholders which a fleet owner usually interacts with. And there are several opportunities for us to improve this value chain of fleet ownership. Of course, there is predictive maintenance. It is very critical to have your fleet up and running and knowing when to give it a maintenance rather than waiting for something to fail. Of course, there is real-time visibility. GPS does that. And slowly we're coming to the crux of it. Usage-based information. Not every car is equal. Not every driver is equal. You have to analyze the data coming from individuals. And that leads us to a more refined version of what we are going to talk about is usage-based insurance. Basically, it says that just because you drive a red car doesn't mean you have to pay a very high insurance. It was a joke, if you know that. So just because you drive a red car doesn't ensure that you have to pay a higher premium. Why? Because every person who's driving has a different way of driving and different risk factor to it. And based on those risk factors, your insurance or risk will be priced. And based on those prices, your premium will be calculated. And that's the thing that we'll show. OK, this, by the way, is the the landing page of our application for this usage-based insurance. So if you can play the video, or just give me 1 second. Can you just give me 1 second? Go back to the page, please. Let me explain the landing. Yeah. So, sorry, can you go back to the PowerPoint for just 1 second? So this is the landing page of built on top of IIAP, which gives a fleet manager the bird's eye view of all that is happening with his fleet. So over here you see about, I think, 9 cars which are moving around. And one of the cars in red is the one which is having some trouble. He also knows what is the utilization rate of a summary dashboard. So what we are going to do is drill down at each granular level and find out what is wrong with that particular equipment. Can we start the video, please? So now what we see is we are drilled down to that one particular car, and we are slowly starting to get the information about the car. So for example, we know who the driver is, and when we drill down, we know that what particular point did that car had a problem. In this case, the coolant level was very less, and this data is captured in this graph. You know, this graph was built by the analytics engine. If you can pause there for a while, a little, if you move a few seconds backwards to that screen. Yeah, when the graph came. Okay, it doesn't matter. So what happens is, and touching upon what Vivek was saying, we are not streaming the data directly to the blockchain. What we stream is an incident, a particular incident when something went wrong, which can be actioned upon by different parties. That is the information which goes there. And the one which has popped up right now, if you can pause there for a while, please. Okay, this time I'll try to follow the video. So now we clicked at the, underneath the bonnet. We understood where the problem lies. We've captured that incident. Only that incident got recorded into Corda. We go back. Let's see. No, that's. Now we'll see that we are seeing something called the insurance over there. When you click there, we see the insurance policy life cycle. And if you notice over here, that the policy premium has changed. It was earlier 150 based on the color of your car, but now based on your driving pattern, the insurer was able to correctly price the premium according to your driving pattern. And that data, if you can pause that video just over there, got recorded in your DLT. So this particular transaction that you see over here is a transaction based on your usage that got recorded in the DLT. And that information got distributed to all the stakeholders which needed to action upon that particular information. In this case, the insurer was able to take that riding data, the flag that was set up by the telematics provider, and use it to price the insurance. And hence, in this case, the driver was able to get a more competitive insurance premium. Back to my slide. Is it back? Okay. Okay, so the video is over. I'll quickly run through how this IAP looks like. So there are a few components of this application accelerator. Of course, you need to absorb the data from the physical world. You have the IoT services for that. But that IoT service, the data that you get has to be processed. There has to be ETL on that. And now only after the transformation and the imputation happens, does it become fit for your DLT service providers. So once the DLT...
Here I just wanted to make the point, because when we have done this before, the question comes is, why do you need that DLT layer in the middle? Because here, this is a classic use case where there are multiple parties, the insurer, probably the auto company, and there could be potentially the city authorities who want this data, and you want to ensure that that data is provided in a reliable, signed manner. So any centralized solution in this case is subject to disputes and subject to being manipulated, because the incentives of all the parties in this case are quite different. So DLT is, in this case, for example, makes an ideal solution.
Thank you, Vivek. And we didn't just stop over there. That insights engine can also take in third-party or external world data, and then put it in a AI and ML box, which basically gives you real-time information to the driver based on your usage. So there are two components of it. Inside the IIP, there is the DLT part, which allows you to communicate the data to the right stakeholders so that the data becomes actionable. In this case, so that you can price your insurance product correctly, or rather, you can say that we could give a competitive pricing to a user. And the AI part, which allows you to see how you're driving, or gives you predictive maintenance capabilities. And the third part, which is critical to understand or sense the physical world, which comes through the IoT gateway. So quickly coming to the crux of it, the real DLT part. So the way we imagine it is a very simplified process of imagining the DLT architecture of it. So in this case, the fleet manager requests for a user-based insurance policy. Now it is the first time that he is requesting for this insurance. So the auto insurance doesn't have any usage-based data or history behind that fleet manager. So what the auto insurer does is just returns back with the premium, which is previously calculated as 100 based on historical data or segments of data. Or in this case, what we can say, all the drivers who have ridden a red car, they're dangerous, so the premium is 100. Now, what happens is, as the fleet manager continues with the fleet, this data, the driving pattern, gets recorded. Incidents such as the less amount of coolant in the car gets recorded as incidents. Your heart breaks and the way you drive, the number of tickets that you get, gets recorded in the blockchain. And that information can be passed to the auto insurers, which can then be used to price the insurance product. Now you may ask, I could have just sent it over an email. Yes, you could, but then the question of irrefutability comes in. You have no control saying that whether this data is accurate or not, whether this is the same data which everyone is looking at or not. So the irrefutability part is what we are addressing through, only one of the parts that we are addressing through this ledger-based system. You want to take a second of that?
Yeah, so again, on this piece, not to dwell on the point too much, but again, from our perspective, what we like from a design view is that it doesn't overload the DLT with all the telematics data, because at the end of the day, that will make the system very non-performant. What it does is analyzes the trip data of the DLT and then sends the trip score, which is what has to be harmonized between the people. And I think the general point that we are trying to make from this is that when you're creating your blockchain systems, whether for your smart cities, whether for your insurance applications, it is very critical to think about the architecture and think about what you really want to put on the chain versus what can survive off the chain and still have the same amount of utility that the blockchain can provide.
Thank you. So just how a typical data set looks like. Am I running short of time? Just give me 1 minute. See, I've got the specs. Okay, so a typical data looks like, what is your last, replacement or maintenance date for a particular equipment that went into your vehicle, the distance traveled, the number of hard brakes that you made, or based on those simple data sets, what you could do is you could run your predictive maintenance, find out when the next replacement is required. You could do much more than that. You could do for instance, the insurer could make monitor risk associated with that kind of vehicle or under the operating condition in which the vehicle is running. And the financial analyst, for instance, could apply based on the usage pattern, I could now do a better analysis of the depreciation. And if you know depreciation is directly linked to your tax savings, and that will in fact flow into your cash flows. And of course, similar kind of reasoning can be applied for your reselling and scrap value. With this, I'm done with my demo. Hope you like it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had a whole list of jokes, by the way, if you had given me some time.
We can take questions offline. I think we're running out.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So we're going to start the panel, which is I would like to invite Mr. P.K. Banerjee to the dais. He's the executive director for the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers. He has been in the industry for over 20 years, working with Tata, Daewoo, and Toyota. He has an MTech in Thermal Science and Engine Performance and a PhD from the Indian Institute of Technology, both from Indian Institute of Technology, and he's a lifetime member of the Combustion Institute. Mr. Banerjee, if you may join us on the stage. I would also like to invite Ria. Ria is the director and CEO of Veridoc, which is creating ecosystems by harnessing the power of blockchain's technology. She has worked with Audi in Germany and American Express in New York and has had a string of startups, and we would love to tap into her knowledge. I would then invite Piyush. Piyush is a senior principal within supply chain operations and sustainability strategy practice with Accenture Consulting. He's also leading the blockchain capability across industry verticals within Capability Network India in India. He's a global blockchain faculty coaching internal teams and C-suite on the relevance and impact of new technologies. Last, I would invite Mithil to the stage. Mithil is a blockchain entrepreneur who has co-founded Quillhash, a core enterprise blockchain company. Recently, they have launched a project called Quill Audits, which is a smart contract security audit platform to secure the money flowing through the blockchain ecosystem. He blogs and he's actively working on a book on blockchain security and cybersecurity. All right, so I thought the way we would do this panel is I would start the seed of the conversation, and then I will request each one of you to comment, right? I want to start with the title of this panel. And the title of the panel is Supply Chain and Logistics, an Opportunity for Blockchain. But first, I would like to invite Mr. Banerjee to talk to us for a few minutes about the challenges that he sees in the automotive and supply chain sector in India, the key challenges that he sees in this sector. We have talked about briefly offline. There are several problems in India as you compare it to the traditional developed ecosystem, one of them being unorganized presence of SMEs, large enterprises, all of them. But Mr. Banerjee, if you would start us off with the challenges that you see in this sector.
Thank you, Praphul, and thank you, MOBI team, for inviting and giving us opportunity to be present here. If you see the automobile industry and the ecosystem of developing a product, servicing, and providing the mobility solutions, so I think there are 5 steps which decides its efficiency and its productivity, its reliability, its quality, and its delivery. So first part is the product conceptualization, R&D, and development. This followed by the supply chain planning, followed by logistics and sourcing, and then product creation, production, manufacturing, followed by sales, marketing, and servicing, and vehicle logistics. So in this, I think the biggest challenge, if you see for the last 20 years of OEMs, product development lead time, once the product is on the manufacturing line, the waiting time for the manufacturer. So even one of the most popular products which you might have seen in the last 2-3 years, they had a 6 months waiting time, 4 months waiting time. It's all reflection of, I think, the importance of the blockchain technologies which will perhaps bring transformational changes. I think we are in cusp of a time where the mobility industry is seeing the disruption, whether you like it or not, whether it's a connected mobility, shared mobility, electric mobility. I think the mobility as a service is taking a different shape. And that's where I think the technology interventions will make the difference. So as we sit in this point of inflection, we have actually instituted a study, Digital Transformation Roadmap for Indian Automobile Industry. And we represent 49 manufacturers, global manufacturers, and also we have a connect with our ACMA, which is more than 800 companies. So what we have done, we actually hired A.T. Kearney to do the study, and we have come up with the report, that Digital Transformation Roadmap for Indian Automobile Industry. In that, we have identified 11 technology interventions, and blockchain stands number 2. First is IoT. Oh. And in that, the blockchain, we have identified short-term, medium-term, and long-term interventions which perhaps will make the difference. So having migrated from the legacy systems to introduction of the ERPs in various companies, and somebody going one way, somebody going other way, right. Our suppliers have always faced the problem of supplying the multiple, system-based, OEMs. So therefore, as part of SIAM ACMA joint initiative, we have started AutoDX with the help of IBM. And despite 6 years of our engagement with IBM, and we are trying to bring all the OEMs together, we have been able to bring in only 6 or 7 OEMs on board. Right. But now we are starting with a blockchain. So on Monday we have a meeting at IBM Bangalore. We are trying to bring all OEMs together and trying to see if they can start thinking some use case based pilot interventions on blockchain.
So that's interesting. So 2 things that you said caught my attention. One is the scale of the problem. Right, 40 companies in SIAM and 800 odd suppliers who are part of this. And the second thing that you said was that despite trying a technology intervention, you have not been able to succeed in onboarding the suppliers. I think that's a very interesting point because I think this point came up earlier also in one of the panels. We cannot look at this as a technology-only problem. There has to be an incentive or onboarding the ecosystems. Piyush, if you weigh, how do you think about this, right? Do you think the supply chain problem compared to India versus outside with Accenture's global experience, is that something that you want to compare and see how it changes and how blockchain can help there?
So what you are making is the right point. See, more than technology, whenever I talk to my clients, I generally go and say, why not blockchain? So technology is an enabler. And as rightly said by Mr. Banerjee, see, we have to have a roadmap. So if you see an Indian context, when you see mid-cap companies who would be large-cap companies tomorrow, and how the Occidental companies have raised and come to, they are adopting blockchain or IoT. See, the thing is that to adopt a technology, you have to take some basic steps. When I say basic steps, the first important thing is that digitization. So first you have to understand how much is the amount of digitization which is already there into your organization, and how much we work with a lot of clients who are still paper-based. I'm surprised that there are larger clients who are exchanging things over emails, over faxes, over WhatsApp. So the thing is that once you have to have a standard in place where everybody has to share that methodology, then blockchain comes. See, blockchain is an amalgamation of IoT, like rightly said, I guess from DLT Labs, he represented IoT, AI, and blockchain. So it's an amalgamation. So to answer your question, coming from comparing India from Occidental countries, I have seen both sides. See, supply chains are complex, hugely complex, and India is also part of those global supply chains. So if you have to ship a product, or if you have to work with global OEMs, you have to attain those standards. So one important thing is that you have to take a roadmap approach where you have to first see what are my current basic challenges, and it is not technology comes last. It is people, process, and the most important thing is culture and the change management. What the right point is, what is in for me? Why should I be onboarded? Is it only a financial incentive? Is it beyond the financial incentive? So if you compare Indian context with global context, obviously, we look at some short-term benefits. We want to see that if I'm investing X amount of rupees, in how many months will I get a benefit out of it?
The ROI question.
The ROI question. So important thing is that before reaching that ROI, you have to socialize and educate your internal stakeholders. And whenever there is a new technology, it is top down. It is never bottom up. But you have to see at the bottom of the pyramid that how you are, tipping the farmer, how you are tipping the supplier, how you are tipping the drivers, so that your technology adoption is smooth.
But let me ask you this, right? Accenture can of course say this, right? Because they're a global consulting company and they monetize the people, processes, and the technology part. But you being a startup, right? How do you view this problem of technology adoption when you talk to your customers who may be either large enterprises or SMEs? How do you solve this problem saying it's not just technology, your processes need to change and you need to onboard your suppliers and partners? How does a startup like yours look at that problem?
Thanks for this opportunity.
I think the mic is a problem.
It's okay now, I think. Okay. All right. So first of all, thanks for this opportunity. We are super thrilled to be here and to offer, our view of the industry and how things happen and how we can make things happen and make them become a reality soon enough. So the way our conversations have been being a startup and speaking to large companies or even medium companies is to what you said, Piyush, is understanding where the solution is, what is the benefit it can bring, but also to make sure that their ecosystem partners also have consent, that they also agree that yes, this is something that benefits us. So to illustrate, with Accenture, last year we built a demo for Tata Steel. And this was something about a concept to kind of see if they can switch from lump sum turnkey to open book costing. And the demo went great. We did a good job of showcasing how blockchain can help provide transparency in supply, in man material, down the hierarchy of maybe a huge spider's web of contractors.
Right.
At the same time, give the stakeholders control of whatever risks they might encounter.
Right.
But the vendors, the other people in the ecosystem, do not want to open up their pricing.
Yeah.
So getting those people to, how do you say, that kind of consensus, not the blockchain consensus,
Correct.
but that consensus is also very important. And when we are talking about, let's say, in a smart city mobility, it goes even larger and outside of just those, let's say those vendors, for example, with Tata Steel, they work with them, they have contracts with them directly or indirectly. But in this instance, if we're talking about a smart city, we're talking about, let's say, driver's license, let's say cars registrations, and let's say insurance parties, who we want to find a way for them to work together. And so blockchain allows for that, but then they have to be willing to come to the table to have that conversation.
Correct.
Yes. So
right. So Mithil, what about you? Right. You're in a similar position as Ria, but I guess you work one layer down the stack. You work with companies like hers to verify their smart contracts, and you therefore have an exposure to a large number of startups who are trying to do this. What is your experience in when your startup companies go to large enterprises and they have to adopt not only the technology themselves, but to have to incentivize their partners to adopt the technology? What have you experienced there?
Yeah, so I'll be happy to share my experience. The mic, yeah. So thank you first of all for inviting me. I would like to thank MOBI, koinearth. I would also like to thank MIO, who are launching their e-commerce platform very soon. So we are using blockchain in their supply chain, blockchain and DLT, where we are using blockchain in two different aspects, which I would like to say. First of all is identity verification, and second is virtual assets. We are building virtual assets for them, where people can use the tokenized structure to purchase their e-commerce products. So coming back to Quillhash, with Quillhash we have developed a solution for people whom we don't have to sell. First of all, blockchain. They already know where to use blockchain, and when they use blockchain, we help them use it properly and in the most this return getting way possible. So with Quillhash, what we do, we audit smart contracts. So fundamentally, as discussed by guys from DLT Labs, that blockchain has two major advantages. It gives us it facilitates smart contracts, which are like the protocols or rules which we input, how the blockchain will work.
Right, so you are the lawyers of blockchain, right?
Yeah,
you basically look over the contracts and make sure everything is okay.
So I am coming to that. So first of all, blockchain provides smart contracts, then it provides tokenization of the assets, and then it provides the third thing it provides is a DLT, a decentralized, immutable, distributed ledger, which it provides, right? So we when we talk to enterprises, they want to implement blockchain, but they don't know where, right? So we give them a statement that it is as dangerous to not use blockchain where it is needed, as dangerous it is to use blockchain where it is not needed,
Right.
right? So first of all, we help enterprises to understand that, yeah, you use blockchain, but where will you use, in which sector, or in which part of your supply chain, or in which part where the other stakeholders want to connect to the blockchain. And then when they agree that, yeah, of course, this will be the place where we will get return when we use blockchain, we help them create the most suitable, we help them select the most suitable blockchain
Understood.
platform
Understood.
in any way possible. So with our audit platform, once the blockchain is developed, we audit the blockchain. So one thing we all know that with blockchain, privacy, security, everything is maintained. But we have to understand that blockchain in itself is a code, right? So they can have vulnerabilities.
Sure.
So with our audit platform, what we facilitate is we help make blockchain more secure. We help people and we help enterprises create a blockchain in a way that they don't have to make any changes in future.
Understood. So going back to what Mr. Banerjee said, Mr. Banerjee said you said blockchain is the second technology in your ranking of the roadmap of automotive sector. I'm almost tempted to play a taboo game here where you cannot mention words like immutable, distributable, and secured anymore. And without using those words, can you explain what are your expectations from this technology? Right? Forget the technology. What are you expecting the 800 parts manufacturers and the 40 large car manufacturers? What is the gain? What is the value proposition for the businesses?
I think first of all, the migration what we did from maybe yesteryears of legacy systems to ERP introductions, everybody knows what kind of benefits it's reaping. But for a supplier, for example, who is catering to the maybe American OEM, Japanese OEM, and maybe European OEMs, I think if all the three systems are different, he's absolutely pressured to manage three systems and trying to supply three. So it's a kind of huge burden on him. So it's a kind of 800 companies if they are trying to supply to indigenous manufacturers in a different system, trying to latch on to maybe global OEM in his systems. So I think it's a cost, one thing. Second, I think it's important to have a real time. When we say smart transportation, smart transportation is sustainability in its element. And sustainability has multi-facets. So not only the sustainability of the products which are having material safety data inputs, if that is not properly communicated. So blockchain has immense possibilities, not only in terms of simple transactions it is related to, but also the information making available to the people, those who are stakeholders in a real time, is the importance.
I think it's an interesting point that you bring up. One is, the second point that you made is about operational efficiency, right? And I think that's definitely the value proposition that we are also seeing in the solutions that we are deploying. The first point that you made is interesting, right? You basically said that the same person has to enter data in multiple systems because he's dealing with multiple standards. I think Chris is also here. It's an interesting point. See, what we have felt is that blockchain is an enabler. But even if you do the blockchain solution, you still need standards, right? How do you standardize it? Just because the underlying layer enables it, right? How do you make sure that your customers in Europe and in the US and in Japan are going to adopt the same standards? What is the view of a consortium body like yours as to who should drive the standards? Should it be an India-specific body? Is MOBI the right community to do it? What is the role of startups? What is the role of Accenture? What do you think about standardizing those processes where blockchain can help, but you need another layer of governance on top?
I think in a free economy world, I think too much regulated, mandated systems may not be welcomed by people who are trying to survive in the business ecosystem. But trying to bring them together, sensitize them on the virtues of the new systems, and defining a roadmap. So that's the point I'm trying to highlight, that we have identified that if we have to migrate to the larger spread of the blockchain usage in our ecosystem, perhaps we'll have to take up first the pilot use case, wherein we can bring in some few stakeholders, demonstrate its utility, and then in the medium term try to spread it out. In our long-term roadmap, we are trying to reach to a place where perhaps there'll be a kind of mandate, there'll be standards, and then there'll be some kind of.
Good. So Piyush, what do you see as the role of Accenture in this, in terms of creating standards? Do you see that has to be done by a not-for-profit body, and Accenture is kind of an arm's distance, or do you see yourself playing a more active role? I know you are also part of MOBI. What is the role that you see for companies like Accenture, and how do you, again, going back to the same question, how do you make sure the standards are adopted by McKinsey and KPMG?
Yeah, good question. See, Accenture, if you see Accenture as an organization, operates from strategy to operations. So strategy, consulting, technology, digital, and operations. So starting from the first phase, maybe the conceptualization phase, where our consultants work who bring in industry experience, and like people like me are part of MOBI, where we are defining those strategies and standards, because we bring industry experience also with the technology bent of mind. So that helps us to interact with various clients, various OES and OEMs of the world, where we can guide that. Maybe one OEM will see from his perspective, but Accenture will see from 5 perspective, and it will also see from one client to other client perspective with a OES perspective across the value chain. So there, where Accenture brings in a lot of value, and that is why we are part of, and we are SMEs also to vehicle identity and usage-based insurance. So a solution which was shown by R3 Corda and Infosys. So there is a good work which is going in MOBI. Second important thing is from the adoption side. See, it is very important that once the standard is out, the organizations like Accenture will take it to their clients and work. Obviously there are clients also in the consortia.
Sure.
So it's a operating model which will operate, where these large organizations with startup, with OEMs can work and bring a pilot. So the pilot becomes very easy, and then that pilot can be commercialized for commercial business. Ultimately, after these standards are out, any organization, whether it's KPMG, McKinsey, Infosys, all can take those, because it's all standards are open. You customize those standards, and then you build solution over it, basis your client challenges, which the clients is grappling with.
Correct, but let me ask Ria. Ria, you, what do you think about standard? So we personally, being a startup, what we have felt is that we just cannot wait for the standards to come out. They take their own sweet time. I know Chris might shout at me for this after this. They take their own sweet time to come up, and we are in a solution where we have to monetize. So it ends up for us being re-implementation of the same work. You do something, you build something in production, and you go back and standardize it again. What has your experience been? Do you have kind of said standards right now, let's just get things working, we'll handle standards later? Or do you think startups like yourself should get involved in this, defining the standards themselves?
I think it's a combination of both. So because the thing is, it's also a matter of discovery. The more we build the solution, the more problems we try and solve in the solution, we also realize that there are other things that then come up when the forefront of the problems go away and those are solved, and the next set comes up. So along in that process, then we realize that yes, while we're building the solution, we can also address those. So a lot of it is, you discover as you go along. But yes, I think having the company or the companies at the table, at the conversation, when these standardizations are coming up and are being put in place, I think being part of that conversation is important.
Sure.
I think it helps in understanding, how far can something go? How far should it go? For example, let's say pharmaceutical industry. And should they have, to manage their serialization, this thing that's coming up fast and quick, should they have their own blockchain protocol, right? Banking, should they have their own? How much of it can be shared? How much of it cannot be shared, right? So for some things like Hyperledger will allow for privacy, but Ethereum will allow for smart contracts. So then can we go multi-chain? So for banking, maybe, we can say technically, yes, we can do it, but will the standards allow? Will data privacy and those things come in? So having the companies there to talk about what the technical implication could be, how the use case can then change. If this standard were to happen, then the use case can be built a certain way. And if the standards were to change, then it can be built a certain way. So having that early on.
Sure.
Just to add to what Ria is saying, see, the thing is that you have to test the water. But obviously, when adoption has to be with the masses, if the adoption has to be with the global OEMs, OES, not only global OES, it would be banks, entire ecosystem, governments. So everybody, then standards are must. Sure.
So how much time do we have, Annabelle? 1 minute. All right, so we'll probably start taking 2 questions from the audience, and then we'll stop. So we'll take 2 questions. If you have any. Right, so there's one question there, if you can get the microphone.
Hi, thank you. My name is Chowdhury, and I'm just trying to work with this MIO group vision. I just wanted to know any expert like Mithil, what do you have suggestion like blockchain in MIO main chain, something, if you can suggest. Thank you.
Yeah, so first of all, it depends. I mean, when you are building a blockchain for your solution, you have to understand, like I agree with Ria when she said that blockchain like Ethereum accepts smart contracts, blockchain like Hyperledger, they focus on privacy. So you need to understand for your, what are your goals, what are your future plans, what is your focus on while building your project. So that might help you choose the best blockchain platform. There are many blockchain platforms currently, and one more that we have that presented themselves, like Vivek presented R3 Corda, they are for financial systems. So you need to choose the blockchain platform best for your business.
All right, we'll take one more question. Manoj.
Hello, thank you. This one is for Mr. Banerjee. So one of the use cases I see with bringing in blockchain to supply chain is you could do reverse logistics. So you can make companies be responsible in the sense for recycling their goods, especially cars, which we see a lot of debt capital here. What kind of initiatives are you working on in this aspect?
India is a democratic country, and for the last couple of years, the new government have been trying to bring in the fleet modernization, retirement schemes for the vehicle scrappage schemes, and we are in an active dialogue with the government. And in Delhi alone, post the judicial order of banning the 10-year-old diesel vehicles and 15-year petrol vehicles, now more than 2.5 lakh vehicles are actually deregistered in Delhi, but we are not able to know what to do with it, where it is, how to handle it. So we had a meeting last week, and hopefully with the new formation of new government, something very, very concrete actions will be taken. And there I think these blockchain initiatives are definitely going to help us. So we are just looking forward for all possible initiatives. And in fact, the older vehicles, for example, somebody was talking about how to de-incentivize the older vehicles by increase in road taxes, increase in re-registration taxes, and parking restrictions in Connaught Place area or elsewhere, wherever, like London model. So I think these initiatives will definitely help, actually.
All right, I think that's where we'll wrap it up. And thank you. Do we have a break now, or do we have one more panel? No break. We never. Okay. All right, so who is the next panel? Chris, you're taking that?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Guys, we are doing a group photograph also, sorry. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. All yours.
All right, I want to call up the next panel. I think it's getting late. Usually at this time of the day, it's all that's standing between the audience and the cocktail party. But because it's election day, I hear there is no cocktail party. But maybe it's all the standing between us and dinner. So let's bring up the next panel. Karen, Ravi, Vivek, Sanjeev, come on up. Let me introduce people. Vivek, we heard about all of his illustrious career and accomplishments moments ago, so we're not going to do that again.
Yes, thank you.
Sanjeev is the Associate Director of Blockchain Practice at Cognizant, has 15 years of experience in advisory and consulting roles, driving operating model redesign, application transformation, and portfolio rationalization, as well as organizational change management. Ravi Chandrasekaran, business practice partner and business head for India and Asia Pacific Japan for blockchain and emerging technologies at Wipro. Karan Ambwani is the solutions manager at Consensus and a techno-optimist, which it's hard to be these days, thank you, who won design and innovation competitions globally, like the Audi Award for Design and Innovation and SolidWorks Green Design Contest. Karen has a master's degree in international technology from the University of Warwick and a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining the panel today. As before, I want to give each of you a few minutes to introduce yourselves, your projects, your organizations. So let's just go down the line.
Thank you, Chris, and entire MOBI team. It's fantastic. The energy is still flowing from your team. And okay, quickly, I am part of Wipro Technology. I'm a practice partner handling APJ market, Indian APJ market, practicing business technology, majorly blockchain and space. And I like to, this panel is very nicely planned, two SI and two platform owners here. Thank you. The projects we work specifically on the finance and supply chain majority, which we see towards pilot and productions. And we are partnered with R3 in some of the spaces and successfully implemented phase 1 programs in other geos. Thank you.
Thanks, Ravi, and thanks, Chris, for organizing and inviting us for this panel. I'm Karan. I'm the solutions manager for Consensus in India. So Consensus, as most of you might already be aware, is one of the largest blockchain technology companies in the world. We are 1,000+ engineers, entrepreneurs, or enthusiasts in the blockchain and Ethereum space. So our mission is to grow the Ethereum and blockchain ecosystem by developing different products, by investing in ventures that are doing interesting things on the blockchain space. So we started our operations in India last year, and India, we are the solutions arm of Consensus. So Consensus has 5 arms, which are venturing and labs for investing in startups. Also, we are focused on education, which is handled by academy initiatives at Consensus. So India, we are focused on the advisory and consulting side of the business, as well as developing specific solutions and use casing for different sectors like land titling, supply chain, and we have some education initiatives in-house as well. So thank you.
Firstly, thank you for giving us the opportunity. My name is Sanjeev, and I'm part of the blockchain practice within Cognizant. As part of my role, I take care of the strategic partnerships and the pre-sales and the go-to-market strategy. Our practice is fairly large. We've got more than 50+ use cases, and some of them have seen the daylight, which has hit the production. And a few are there in the POCs, and some are in the pilot stages. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Chris, I think I already spoke about R3, but I'll just focus for a bit on what we do in India, because I think that might be of interest. So India is a interesting market for a platform company like R3, which essentially makes and maintains Corda, right? It's because of 2 reasons. One, it's a big market in itself. You can generate potentially a lot of revenue here. But more importantly, it also supports our global ambitions, because a lot of partners such as Cognizant, Infosys, TCS, Wipro, they are all based out of India, and we work with them very closely. So a significant portion of my time goes in supporting these partners achieve their global blockchain ambitions. Apart from that, I also focus on making people aware that Corda is not just for finance. I thought I did a presentation on usage-based insurance, and then someone came and said, Corda is a blockchain for finance, so that's another thing that I focus on.
Great, okay. So I want to make just 2 quick introductory remarks. Number one, I want to thank Consensus and R3 because you guys or your companies are the reason MOBI exists. You don't know it, but when I was a CFO of Toyota, I got Toyota. Toyota was the first non-bank financial to join R3, and I met the founders of R3, and I tried to talk them into starting a mobility consortium, but they wouldn't do it. They said they were too busy with banks and insurance companies and come back later. And then I got Toyota to join the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and I tried to get Consensus to start a mobility consortium, but they wouldn't do it. And so since somebody had to do it, we started MOBI. So thank you guys. The second thing I want to say is this will be the most interesting panel of the day, at least to me, because I spent my lifetime in finance, and so this is the really hot stuff. But also, when you think about the blockchain is about transactions and making transactions more efficient. For every transaction, right, there may be a physical thing that exchanges hands, or a service that changes hands, or some data that changes hands. But there's also another flow, right? In the background, there's a financing, there's a capital flow, right, which enables that. And this panel is about that capital flow. And so it's something that I think is underappreciated, but absolutely critical to the way the world works, to transactions and to human progress. So with that, let me turn to the question. I just ask an open-ended one for anybody. How does blockchain improve the financing of vehicles or supply chains?
Yeah, so a quick quick answer to that is it will support the mobility or the OEM production company or the heavy truck manufacturers seeing themselves into servitization model. Means it is purely subscription and beyond. That's my viewpoint.
So from my perspective, I mean, when I think of financing as a activity, I mean, financing, the outcome of financing is dependent on a whole set of data points, right? At the end of the day, your financing parameters are only as good as the data that you have. And I think that's where, for me, if I strip away everything away from the blockchain, you know, the hype, the smart contracts, everything, at the end of the day, it's ensuring integrity of data between parties who may or may not agree on that same piece of data. How do we do that in an automated, programmatic manner? And if you put both of those together, that financing is essentially a data play, and blockchain is making the data more secure or more trustworthy, then I think it's a key pillar towards ensuring financing.
To add to your point, Chris, the assets on the supply chain move forward and the capital move backward. We have seen many different tools, and I think there was one presentation today as well for asset tracking on blockchain. So the same solutions can be augmented to track financial payments, micro payments, and automate smart contract-based payments on blockchain. So those are some of the interesting use cases for financing of supply chains that we'll see.
So I'd like to illustrate with an example, right? So we recently worked on a POC for one of our customers, and the customer happens to be a banking customer, right? So we kind of built a platform for the customer. This is for the floor planning, right? Wherein, or the inventory buying, right? Wherein the bank funds or pays the OEM for them to give the large inventory of vehicles, right? And then, you know, the vehicles come to the respective dealers, and the dealers, then the banks come to the dealer and do an auditing, right? Which is all manual, right? So once we built this platform, what we did is we onboarded the dealers, we onboarded the OEM, right? So once that is done, and we also, you know, had added the OBD device, which is the IoT device, which basically captures where the vehicle is, you know, all the data that the vehicles, you know, happen to capture, right? So with that being said, right, we also had drawn the geofences, whether once the vehicle comes into the dealership, does it go out of the dealers or not, right? So once we transform this, build that platform, the entire business process of doing this auditing became from 3 days to just less than half a day. Now that's an operational efficiency, right? On top of it, the end user experience or the dealership experience from this point has been tremendous.
You guys all brought out a really interesting point, which is that the financing, if I summarize it, the financing is only as good, only as efficient as the data is good or efficient. And it depends on the quality of the data. And as a historical example, banking wasn't possible until the introduction of double entry accounting, right? Because double entry accounting suddenly exposed, right, what was the financial condition of the borrower. Supply chain financing, right, and incredibly inefficient, right, financing, because supply chain itself is paper-based and the information flows are so bad. When I was CFO, we financed our portfolio at Toyota through securitization, and we had a large securitization portfolio. So, and when you think about it, securitization is really just a database, right? But it turns out that about 2% of the value of the vehicle, of the financing, was eaten up by the securitization. When you look through it, the actual database cost was trivial, right? It was nothing. All of that 2% was going to lawyers and accountants and trusts and reconciliation, right, and accounting and managing the data. So it seems like a huge opportunity here in securitization. And securitization markets are such a huge source of financing for real estate, for mobility, for vehicles, for virtually everything gets securitized. Even David Bowie's songs have been securitized. So what is the future of blockchain in securitization?
So if I can start.
Please.
Yeah, I think for us, especially at R3, this is a thing which is close to our heart. And I think the first really major production application that went live on Corda was actually a securitization application, which is essentially with Finastra. So essentially, the problem that you were describing is exactly the same. Two companies had the same LMS, which was the loan management system, which was provided by Finastra, and they agreed on the same securitization terms and conditions, but when they put the data in, they would inevitably get different values. And then it was about a 2-3 week process to reconcile that, and that was all done between lawyers over phone and email. So yeah, I think that is recognized as a big problem globally. And there are companies looking at this. Finastra is live with this product. There are about 3 or 4 banks who are already using this. I don't know if it's being used for auto financing securitization.
I haven't seen one yet, but there's a lot of interest.
Yeah. So I think it's being used for more of the financial transaction securitization. And I think from an India perspective, this is something that should make a lot of sense, because the securitization market as a percentage of the GDP here is trivial. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. And I think you're seeing a lot of the stresses in the banking system today, and I think banks will start aggressively thinking about securitization going forward. So definitely, I'm hopeful for this sector in India.
One viewpoint is in India, majorly, the auto finance is predominantly provided by non-banking finance segments in India. Not even the overall. Even the OEM is financed by non-banking finance companies, and security is very inevitable there in that part of view. And I think DLT will definitely play a good role in that space.
We talked a little bit about financing. Haven't said much about insurance yet. You did a great presentation on usage-based insurance. Are there other places other than usage-based insurance where insurance, particularly auto insurance or mobility insurance, benefits from blockchain?
So one of the spaces that I see is fraud prevention in insurance claims that we have seen in healthcare industry as well, not just mobility, where if there is transparent and traceable data available, it can prevent a lot of frauds in the industry. And also, second point in insurance would be on expediting the claims processing or payments. So that can also be again achieved through if we have transparent data available on a distributed ledger.
So what I've seen in the market is actually an in-production application that 4 insurers in India are using, which is around tracking no-claim bonuses. So India has this, I mean, most of the audience here is Indian, so they will know if you don't claim insurance, auto insurance during insurance cycle during the year, you get some bonuses which accrue to you from the insurance company. Next year, however, if you stay with the same insurance company, it's all hunky-dory, it's fine. But let's say you switched from insurance company A to B. Now, the insurance company B can only be competitive with A if it gives you credits for that no-claim bonus. But it has got no way of figuring out that you actually didn't make a claim against your previous insurer. Right now, that whole system works on trust and faith. They just ask you for what's your no-claim bonus here, just enter it and they give it to you. And they either reconcile later, or if there is too much of a trouble, insurance companies just eat up the cost. So a group of 4 or 5 insurance companies have actually gotten together to create an application which tracks this no-claim bonus across a blockchain platform. So that at the end of the day, instantaneously as they are generating the quotes, they can figure out that the no-claim bonus is valid, and then they can charge the other insurance company accordingly. So that's one of the introduction use cases. It's seeing a lot of uptake. We are quite hopeful that it will be one of the first real in production scaled use cases in India.
Yeah, just to add to what Vivek said, right? So for instance, if your insurance expires in India, right? It follows a separate process wherein there is a auditor who comes and takes the pics of your vehicle, and then it goes back to the processing, and the entire process is longer, right? I think with the IoT managing your vehicle, whether it has got a scratch, which has got a bump, whatever, I think that would ease up the process as well.
Yeah. So in that space, we have a solution with working with the manufacturing, truck or vehicle manufacturing. We built built-in system which can track capability and recording those into DLT. Yeah.
Well, I have another maybe interesting use case, which is in new cars today. There may be more than one untrusted party in the car, the driver and the AI. Toyota had a situation a few years ago where people were claiming that their cars were causing accidents through unintended acceleration. The automatic system taking control, and every time somebody got in an accident, they said the car did it. Is there a role for a blockchain within the car in sorting out that?
If we give a private key to the AI to sign whatever decision it is taking, then we can have a trace of who has made the decision in a particular case. Why not?
So maybe
even in like recently, we have seen Boeing accidents happening because of a software malfunction, which was basically overtaking the control of the aircraft. So similarly, if we have a traceability of who made the decision through a distributed ledger, yeah, that can be achieved in a way.
Okay.
Theoretically, yes.
Okay. Same thing maybe for over-the-air updates and certifications and registries of training, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What are the biggest near-term opportunities in the financial sector, insurance, finance?
The immediate, what I see, we are prominently on the vehicle identity, and then KYC is what we are working predominantly on the regulatory and AML part of that. As the request is coming, and we are we are hands-on in working with them, and at the same time we are connected with MOBI now. So that is the space is near time, which is that need in the Indian space, particularly India in this region.
I think the usage-based insurance is a very good use case, right? We at Cognizant have a couple of conversations going on that front.
I'm actually quite interested or at least intrigued by some of the use cases I've heard from the two-wheeler manufacturers, not the car, these things around EV charging infrastructure and how blockchain can be Can you guys hear me? Okay. And how blockchain can be leveraged there. So it probably is not near term, but I think it's got a huge potential. So the problem is the following. There are people who are thinking actively of setting up battery replacement or a charge battery replacement infrastructure across the country. So you bring your scooter to them, instead of you having to charge your battery, they take out the battery bank and put in a new battery bank, and you pay them whatever it costs for charging. The problem is that with that is that the performance of your vehicle then becomes dependent on how well that party has charged the battery. And if one of the batteries is 80% charged, another one is 100% charged, or was charged at a higher frequency or at a lower voltage or whatever, it's your car or your scooter that takes the damage. So there is a lot of talk around using a blockchain platform to actually record how your EV infrastructure was charging. So that at the end of the day, if something goes wrong in your vehicle because of the battery, you can actually establish the cause. It was not me, not because of my driving, but rather it was the faulty battery which was charged at this charging station maybe 2 days ago or 2 months ago or something like that. And the manufacturer who actually owns the inventory of the battery can then apportion costs down its supply chain or down its or forward in its supply chain, distributor chain, to the people who are actually charging the infrastructure. Not near term, but I think next 2-3 years, if EVs pick up the way they are picking up, and I think in India, EVs would be led more by two-wheelers than four-wheelers, I think this would be a very, very interesting thing to look forward to.
So in parallel to the usage-based insurance use case that we are seeing, and no one has mentioned about any security tokens or any fractional ownership as of yet, but that's another point that we have seen new incentive mechanisms for carpooling in centralized systems, but not in India, but in some Western countries, we will start seeing fractional ownership of vehicles for usage by private entities, and which could be based on offering a security token, especially now that the regulations have become a bit more clearer in US, for example. So these are also some of the applications that we'll see coming up.
Yeah, maybe let's explore that one a little bit more, because I think that gets at the maybe an additional interest issue of ownership, because it's financing which permits ownership. At least in most of the world, people get cars by financing them, which means that the vast majority of the population of the world is locked out of new vehicle ownership. Right, if you actually look at the price of a new car versus what it takes to qualify for a loan, only about 5% of the world can qualify. But if you looked at it in a different way of a security token where you had a fractional ownership, many more could afford it. And if you looked at it even in another way of somebody is committing to work, perhaps as a Uber or Ola driver, right, in exchange for the ownership of the car, right, and the earnings from the driving would then go and pay for the loan. Is that a financing model which might be facilitated by blockchain, by tokenized fractional ownership?
Yeah, sure. So not just that, even we have started seeing self-driving cars, not autonomous vehicles, but cars that you can lease out yourself and drive instead of a chauffeur or driver providing the service. So those kind of applications have started getting a lot of traction in India. These can also be, so there could be like a co-op kind of an arrangement between vehicles where a particular vehicle is linked to multiple owners, and based on the availability of the vehicle, the owner can get inside the car using their wallet, and they can use the vehicle, drop it, and that would be just registered, logged in that particular owner's usage for insurance claims as well as for any maintenance that could be distributed between owners as well.
I'd like to add there. So we have recently done a project in one of the leading Dubai-based automobile leasing and renting and financing company, where we have similarly supported that enables both the one assessed across multiple users, different users, as well as and it provides end experience both in terms of customer as well as the servicing standpoint.
So fractional ownership could be defined as I own a portion of the car for its life, right? And that can be done with tokens. Another way of fractional ownership would be I can own, right, the next week of the car's life, or the next month of a car's life, or the next year of the car's life, a fractional ownership of time. This is an interesting, obscure piece of blockchain trivia, and we'll see if anybody in the audience can answer. Do you know the example that was used in the original paper on smart contracts? The Veridoc paper. It's a paper that... That was one of them. There were actually two. The other was an auto lease that the lease automatically terminated. Really good. You win the prize, which is the respect of your peers. It was the only coin worth having, really. That's really good. It was a 1997, I think, paper, so predating the Nakamoto white paper by 10 years on smart contracts.
More for understanding, explaining smart contracts.
Yes, paper on smart contracts, yeah. Could give bonus points for who wrote the paper, but that's going too deep. All right, so I asked about near term. What are the most interesting financing, insurance, long-term opportunities? What's out there on the horizon that's kind of crazy and fun?
Financing, peer-to-peer financing in a consortium way, what I look upon where there is no banks involved, maybe a fintech aggregator, account aggregator, driven peer-to-peer, so that even I'm talking about a personal loan or the auto finance, or I would say in India, yes, we would say that MSME, like micro, small, medium, those areas are picking up. That's a new segment, and it needs a lot of regulations. However, we see that's a good space coming up.
Peer-to-peer.
So as Ravi has mentioned about aggregators, one of our European entities, Consensus, is exploring a use case, not necessarily in finance, but aggregation of mobility vehicles. For example, in Madrid itself, we see that there are around 18, last I checked, there were like 18 scooter last mile service providers for the same very niche problem. For a user, you can imagine how difficult that is to check between different apps to figure out which is the closest vehicle or which is more financially viable to pick up. So with blockchain, we can see some systems which are aggregator of data available from these providers, and this would be a very easy interface for a user from a user standpoint.
Great.
Not talking about any socialist models here, but there would be some incentives definitely there for everyone, even the businesses.
Great.
So I think around automated fleet management and essentially a fleet management and operation system that is completely automated. So one of the crazy ideas that Mike Hearn likes to throw around is around robot cars giving birth to other robot cars. So autonomous vehicles comes out of a fractional of a production line, registers itself with Uber, keeps driving, it keeps a track of how much it has earned, and the moment it says that it can afford a baby car, it sends a message to the Toyota production line that you can now produce another car that joins my fleet. So yeah, that word might happen.
Okay, so I'm a big fan of Mike Hearn and that particular example. A lot of us with an interest in mobility and blockchain trace their interest back to Mike Hearn's Turing talk of 2014. Anyway, Mike made some other interesting points. He said that, if I remember correctly, the definition of life is something that metabolism, it makes its living off its environment. It varies, right? It learns from its environment and changes its program, which is the machine learning that's embedded in the car, and the reproduction, which you just gave the example of. So his point, I think, was tongue-in-cheek that the first form of artificial life might be a car. So on that note, why don't we open it up to the audience for questions?
So this question from the whole panel, especially for Vivek, I guess. We talked about securitization markets, right? One of the challenges we see is when you talk about securitizing with physical products, right? Intel is positioning Sawtooth as something that will secure the IoT layer. How do you see Corda playing with, or any other blockchain playing with Sawtooth, right? To make sure that the physical asset that you're connecting, I think there's a slide that you put up, right? Saying how do you connect it to the physical world, and you said we kind of don't go there. I think that's what you said. But if Sawtooth goes there and Corda does not, how do you see that relationship playing? And maybe the other panelists can talk about Ethereum and Hyperledger.
So I think with of Hyperledger, I think the story is fairly complementary. So when the need arises, if Sawtooth takes upon itself to digitize the physical layer, the way I would want to put it, and then Corda can act as a backbone for that, there's no reason that we would stop and not integrate with Sawtooth. So for example, just to take another flavor of Hyperledger, Indy, right? Indy is doing the same thing but on the identity space. And we wanted to focus on identity because identity in its forms of KYC, AML, all of those type of things are very important to financial services from which we derive our DNA. So we actually went and did interoperability with Hyperledger Indy. This also goes to the this also goes to the broader question of digital islands forming in the blockchain, because we have a platform, they have a platform, everybody has a platform. What happens? But I think as each platform finds its own niche, finds things that it does well, the market forces itself will ask all these platform providers to create interoperability, and that's where I think we'll see the world moving.
This is a question to no one in particular, I guess Vivek, because you're birthing autonomous vehicles idea. So, in the sharing economy, we've actually been doing quite a lot of research on the concept that a public blockchain, no one owns a public blockchain, right? It's one of the first pieces of infrastructure that's actually not owned by any person at all. So what we've been looking at is the concept that a smart contract can actually, say you have shared vehicles or any sort of shared asset, the smart contract could actually put money aside or a value aside and then use that value at a certain point to purchase more smart contracts. So the question for anyone that wants to answer is, how does government regulation handle when no one actually owns something that is fractionally used by other people? Is there anything that facilitates that? I mean, the closest we've got is, I guess, in the UAE, where an AI has a citizenship or something like that.
So what I see, it's a different view. The perspective is when the government come up with pass the bill and the particular regulation of that, come out with a license saying what I see, because blockchain DLT strengthen the hands of regulators. So these are the new companies evolve based on the license are account aggregator, the registrar, right? The independent registrar in a various forms. They take care of tracking this special initiative in terms of, along with the standard body like MOBI as well as any other form, and take care of the standardization and implementation of those. That's what my view. And that will be evolving, because I am seeing similar in the UCC telecom space or the NBFC, what we are seeing in India. So these are the space, and I'll leave it to panel.
So in my point of view, I agree that in certain use cases, we see that, for example, cryptocurrencies or security tokens, utility tokens, they'll be adopted much faster by machines in a machine-to-machine economy. So I believe we are all more of a technologists here. We would worry about disrupting and innovating in the space, and we will work with the regulators to understand how, now that we have got a technology which is of benefit to the society and the planet in general, so how we can regulate this from governance point of view.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm from Australia, and the Indigenous Australians didn't have the concept of ownership. It's not culturally, they don't understand ownership. And in this sort of sense of what we've been looking at, it takes the concept of ownership away and looks at shared use instead.
have time for one more question.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Coming back to your question about securitization and specifically on the fractional ownership, don't you think that to have fractional ownership, it automatically makes it imperative to have a secondary market? Because without a secondary market, we'll not have a sum of values of all the fractional owners to the actual asset. It's like equity. So if you don't have a secondary market, the value of your fractional ownerships is not reflecting the correct valuation of the actual asset that you have.
So a fractional asset market without a secondary market, a fractional asset ownership without a secondary market, we have that in the US. It's called a timeshare. No, I think you're exactly right. If you want to have a functioning market, you have to have a secondary market. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. But that, okay, I'll park the question for the next one.
No, and I think to that, and that's where the biggest challenges lie, especially in a market like India, right? Because once you get into, I don't think any policymaker innately objects to fractional ownership, but once you get into this exact thing of, okay, what does that mean? How does that get traded? That's when the complicated policy questions come in. And that's when regulators always step back and they're like, oh, I need to think about it. So yeah, I mean, that's a great question.
My answer is I agree.
Same here, I agree.
All right, let's, on that note of agreement, what a wonderful way to end the day. Thank you. For our panel, great panel, thank you guys. So, could I just ask everybody to stay around just for a minute? I know we have dinner coming up, to just finish this out here. Thank you. Another round for our panelists. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Gupta. Yeah. All right, so we heard a lot today about technology, the convergence of IoT, AI, blockchain, which will disrupt every industry and every business model. But it's also about empowering people and improving the quality of life and ultimately democratizing resources and information. And the beautiful thing about blockchain and why it's captured our imagination and sparked our passion and why we're here is that it's fundamentally democratizing as a technology. And by that I mean it has the potential to reverse some of the trends that are so disturbing towards monopoly, towards concentration of power that have been driven by previous rounds of digitization. So it's fitting, and we're frankly very honored to be here in India, in Delhi, on election results day of the world's biggest democracy, of the world's largest democratic election in history, to be talking about this fundamentally democratizing adventure in blockchain and mobility. So thank you for coming. Thank you for participating and contributing today. Thank you for joining MOBI. We encourage you to join. We encourage you to learn more about Satopia and contribute to that. Special thanks to Pram, to Richa, and to the Smart Cities India Expo team who helped us put this together. Thanks to Praphul and the koinearth team who did such a great job of helping us organize. Thanks to Tram, CP, and Annabelle. I'll give a double thanks to Tram, who did double duty as organizer and speaker and running Zootopia. Thank you to everybody. It was a great event.